Welcome to Hollywood. In this video, we are going to take a deep and emotional look into the lives of 12 iconic actors and singers from the golden age of Hollywood who, despite achieving fame and adoration in their prime, died in heartbreaking poverty. These were the stars who once lit up the silver screen and topped the music charts, but whose stories ended in tragedy, loneliness. 1. Bela Lugosi, the man who became Dracula. Bela Lugosi was once the face of Universal horror in the 1930s. He captivated audiences with his accent, charm, and chilling presence. But as horror trends shifted and roles dried up, Lugosi became typecast and eventually struggled with drug addiction and health problems. Despite his iconic status, Lugosi died in 1956 almost penniless, living in a modest apartment and relying on meager residuals. He was buried in one of his Dracula capes, a haunting reminder of how even horror legends can fade into poverty. 2. Billie Holiday, the voice of jazz and one of the most influential singers of the 20th century, Billie Holiday sang with raw emotion that touched millions. But her life behind the microphone was riddled with pain, abusive relationships, racism, and substance addiction. Though she earned huge sums at her peak, Holiday's money disappeared due to drug charges, medical bills, and management exploitation. When she died in 1959 at just 44 years old, she had 70 cents in the bank and $750 strapped to her leg, money allegedly smuggled to her by a friend. 3. Judy Garland, a child star turned icon, Judy Garland will forever be remembered as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But behind the rainbows and ruby slippers was a woman plagued by studio abuse, addiction, and crushing financial pressure. By the time of her death in 1969, Garland had declared bankruptcy, struggled with IRS debts, and was performing in tiny clubs just to survive. She died in a rented London apartment, reportedly with just a few dollars in her possession. 4. Bobby Driscoll, Disney's first child star and the voice of Peter Pan, Bobby Driscoll was once a household name. But as he entered adolescence, Hollywood abandoned him. Addicted to heroin and blacklisted from the industry, Driscoll's life spiraled out of control. He died alone and unknown in a derelict New York apartment in 1968. His body was buried in a pauper's grave, and it wasn't until over a year later that his identity was even discovered. 5. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was once hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising talents. A fiercely intelligent woman who challenged studio control, Farmer quickly found herself labeled difficult, a kiss of death in 1940s Hollywood. Institutionalized and subjected to brutal treatments, she faded from the spotlight. By the time of her death in 1970, she was living modestly and far from the glamour she once embodied. Despite being a symbol of beauty and defiance, she died nearly forgotten and financially destitute. 6. Paul Robson, actor, singer, and civil rights activist. Paul Robson was a towering figure in the 1930s and 40s. With a deep voice and commanding presence, he broke racial barriers in both stage and screen. But his outspoken political beliefs, especially during the McCarthy era, led to his blacklisting. Robson's career was destroyed, his passport revoked, and his income vanished. Isolated and mentally worn, he spent his final years in relative obscurity and financial difficulty, passing away in 1976 with his legacy muted and his fortune gone. 7. Veronica Lake, a blonde bombshell of the 1940s, Veronica Lake was known for her peekaboo hairstyle and femme fatale roles. But behind the scenes, Lake struggled with alcoholism, studio clashes, and mental health issues. As roles dried up, so did her fortune. By the 1960s, she was working as a waitress at a New York hotel bar. Though she made a brief comeback with a memoir, she died in 1973 of kidney failure, broke, alone, and largely forgotten by the industry she once ruled. 8. Sammy Davis Sr. The father of Rat Pack legend Sammy Davis Jr., Sammy Davis Sr. was a vaudeville performer and dancer in his own right. While never as famous as his son, he worked hard through the 1920s and 30s, performing wherever he could. Sadly, as age crept in and opportunities faded, Davis Sr. fell into poverty. He died in 1988 with very little, overshadowed by his son's stardom and with no pension or wealth from his decades in show business. 9. Edward G. Robinson. Famed for his gangster roles in classics like Little Caesar, Edward G. Robinson was one of the most respected actors of the 1930s and 40s. Despite earning a fortune in his career, he lost much of it due to a bitter divorce and bad investments. Blacklisted during the McCarthy era, Robinson's work dwindled, and his final years were plagued by financial woes. He died in 1973, not destitute, but far from the wealth and grandeur one might expect from such a Hollywood titan. 10. Eie Brown. Beloved for his comedic roles in the 1930s, including Some Like It Hot, Eie Brown was a household name for years. He also served the USO during World War II and was known for his charitable work. But Brown's later years were difficult financially. Like many stars of his time, he lacked modern royalties or protection from inflation. Though he died with dignity in 1973, he had little in the way of wealth to show for his massive popularity during the Golden Age. 11. Hattie McDaniel. The first African American to win an Oscar. For her role in Gone with the Wind, Hattie McDaniel faced barriers that never allowed her to truly cash in on her success. Typecast into servant roles and often ostracized by both black and white communities, her career struggled despite her historic win. In her later years, she battled breast cancer and financial troubles. Though she remained proud of her accomplishments, McDaniel died in 1952 with modest means in a Hollywood that had largely turned its back on her. 12. Carl Alfalfa Switzer. Famous for his role as Alfalfa in The Little Rascals, Carl Switzer never quite managed to shake the image of his childhood fame. After struggling to find adult acting roles, he drifted into odd jobs, including bartending and dog training. By 1959, he was living paycheck to paycheck. That same year, he was killed in a dispute over $50. A tragic and senseless end to someone who once made millions of kids laugh across America, yet died with barely anything to his name. Outro. And there you have it, 12 actors and singers from the golden age of Hollywood who went from fame and fortune to financial ruin and heartbreaking ends. These stories are a sobering reminder that behind the glamour of old Hollywood lies a world of exploitation, addiction, broken dreams, and forgotten legends. We hope this video shed light on the darker corners of entertainment history. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Hollywood for more deep dives into the lives of classic stars. Thanks for watching.